The grass suddenly rustled with a sharp, violent shiver, and in the next heartbeat, an 8-foot black cobra sprang toward Karen, with wide eyes burning with venom, every muscle in its body coiled with lethal intention. A silence fell over the farmland, as if karma itself had decided that today was the day justice would be served. The farmlands of Pine Ridge, Georgia, had always welcomed sunrise with calm simplicity, soft breezes brushing across hay bales, cattle stirring lazily, and the old porch glowing under the warm light with a jar of cold, sweet tea. But beneath that calm, fate had already begun to gather. For weeks, Karen Whitmorth, infamously entitled President of the Pine Ridge, HOA, had been trespassing onto the Miller family's private farmland like she owned the entire county. She claimed she was performing HOA inspections, even though the property lay legally outside HOA boundaries. She strutted through barns, walked across grazing fields, and talked about bringing the land under HOA compliance, completely ignoring decades of legal ownership records. 3 generations of Millers had worked this land, but Karen behaved as if her HOA badge held more authority than the county sheriff. Every warning about wildlife, especially the venomous snakes that thrived in tall summer, grass was brushed aside with arrogant laughter. She called the farmer overdramatic and said she didn't fear a couple of little garden snakes. But this wasn't garden snake territory. Pine Ridge farmland was known for something far deadlier, and on that morning, nature finally decided to hold her accountable. The day had started peacefully. Wind moved lazily through the fields, birds called from distant oak trees, and everything felt slow and safe until the sudden violent crash of breaking wood shattered the silence. Karen's white SUV smashed through the Miller family's private gate in a storm of dust and splinters. She stepped out with the same superiority she always carried: oversized sunglasses, stiff blazer, clipboard in hand, and an attitude loud enough to fill the entire field. She marched straight toward the tall grass section of the farmland, the same area she'd repeatedly been told to avoid, muttering about property violations, illegal structures, and community rights. She walked deeper into the grass as if she were inspecting a backyard, not trespassing onto a working farm with dangerous wildlife. But this time, her arrogance led her directly into nature's path. The grass shifted unnaturally. A low hiss vibrated through the ground. Karen froze only for a second, just long enough for fate to close in. The grass burst open. An enormous black cobra rose like a living shadow who'd flared, body shimmering under the sun like polished steel. Before she could gasp or step back, the cobra lunged with terrifying precision. It wrapped around her torso with crushing strength, its coils tightening slowly but deliberately, as if it knew exactly how to break her composure. Her sunglasses flew off, her clipboard dropped, and every ounce of her inflated power vanished in an instant. 2 HOA members who had accompanied her screamed from a distance but were paralyzed by fear, too terrified to approach. Karen's breathing turned shallow as the cobra tightened its muscular coils around her ribs. Panic twisted across her face, raw, unfiltered, real. The snake lifted its hood again, positioning its head inches from her cheek. Its tongue flicked rapidly, tasting her fear. The entire farmland fell silent. Even the cattle stopped moving. It was as if the land itself paused to witness the justice unfolding. For the first time in her life, Karen was powerless. There was no HOA rule she could enforce, no threat she could make, no authority she could wave in the face of nature. She tried to cry out, but the snake's pressure stifled her breath. Her knees buckled, her arms shook uncontrollably, and her mind spiraled into terror. In one devastating moment, her ego collapsed. Pine Ridge farmland wasn't hers to control. It wasn't a playground for her power. It was alive, ancient, and unforgiving, and for the first time, it struck back. Karen's legs buckled beneath her as the cobra's thick, muscular coils tightened around her torso, squeezing the breath from her lungs and crushing every ounce of arrogance she once carried so proudly. Her blazer tore at the shoulder, her hair clung to her dust-covered face, and the clipboard she'd brought to inspect the farmland lay shattered on the ground. She wasn't the feared HOA president anymore. She looked like a terrified intruder caught in the jaws of a justice she had spent years provoking. Her two HOA companions stood frozen near the fence line, trembling violently, unable to even lift their phones to call for help. They had always believed Karen's claims that the HOA could overrule county maps and private property rights. But now they were witnessing something undeniable. Nature didn't care about HOA power, titles, or petty control. 10 yards away, Daniel Miller sprinted out of the barn after hearing the women's panicked screams. At first sight, even he froze. The scene was shocking. An 8-foot cobra coiled around the body of the woman who had harassed his family for weeks. The snake's hood expanded like a deadly crown, its head raised inches from her trembling face. Daniel knew he had seconds, maybe minutes, before the snake either struck or suffocated her. He grabbed a long livestock staff, a sturdy 5-foot pole used to guide cattleland, approached slowly. Each step calculated and deliberate. "Don't move," he whispered, not as a command, but as a warning. Karen couldn't respond. Her chest rose in shallow, broken gasps, her hands twitching helplessly at her sides. Tears streamed down her cheeks, cutting lines through the dust. The cobra sensed her panic and tightened even more, its black scales gleaming in the sunlight like polished armor. Daniel tapped the ground lightly with the staff, trying to redirect the snake's attention without provoking a strike. Sweat rolled down his temple as he edged closer. He had handled snakes before: copperheads, rattlers, even the occasional escaped pet python, but nothing as lethal or as aggressive as this. One wrong move, one sudden vibration, and the cobra's fangs could end her life in seconds. Inch by inch, Daniel created subtle vibrations through the soil, nudging the snake's awareness toward him. The cobra lifted its head slightly, loosening its grip by the slightest margin. It wasn't enough, but it was a start. Karen's voice finally cracked out in a desperate, guttural whisper. "Help, please." A sound so broken it barely resembled the woman who once barked. HOA violations like she was sheriff of Pine Ridge. Daniel steadied his breathing and extended the staff underneath part of the snake's body, applying gentle pressure. For a moment, time froze. The farmland fell into complete stillness. Then, with a slow, ghost-like motion, the cobra began to uncoil, sliding its powerful body away from Karen's torso. Daniel backed away immediately, keeping the staff low and angled, guiding the snake toward the tall grass. The cobra turned, hissed once a long, threatening note before disappearing into the swaying field as silently as it had appeared. The moment it vanished, Karen collapsed. Her legs folded beneath her, sending her face first into the dirt. She coughed violently, grabbing at the ground to stabilize herself. Deep red coil marks covered her neck, chest, and arms, swollen and darkening with bruises. Her entire body trembled uncontrollably. She looked fragile, shaken, and almost unrecognizable compared to the iron-willed enforcer who had shattered the Miller family's gate only minutes earlier. Her HOA companions rushed to her side, lifting her under the arms, but she could barely stand. When she finally managed to speak, her voice was a quivering whisper. "I can't breathe." They guided her toward the SUV, practically dragging her across the dirt. Before she climbed in, Daniel stood a few feet away and spoke the words she had ignored for weeks. "This is private property. Stay off my land." This time she didn't argue. She didn't threaten fines, mention the HOA charter, or declare non-existent authority. She simply nodded, weak, shaken, terrified. As the SUV pulled away, the broken gate creaked behind them, splintered boards swaying in the wind like a memorial for her shattered ego. Word spread quickly across Pine Ridge. By the next morning, Karen had resigned from the HOA board without explanation. Neighbors whispered that she refused to walk on grass anymore, only using paved driveways or wooden porches. Others claimed she hired a wildlife specialist to inspect her own yard twice a week, terrified that a snake might be hiding under a bush or patch of weeds. For the first time in years, she avoided conflict, avoided confrontation, avoided trespassing, and most importantly, she avoided the Miller farmland like it was cursed. The same land she once demanded control over had humbled her in a way no legal letter or sheriff's warning ever could. The farmland had defended itself. Nature had drawn its line, and karma had delivered a lesson that echoed through Pine Ridge. Power means nothing when nature decides to strike.